Welcome to the CX Files. I'm Peter Ryan. Now, diversity and inclusion has taken on significant momentum in recent times and has become a very important priority in the contact center business, with both outsourcers and their clients looking to incorporate more diversity into how CX is delivered to end users. Understanding the best manner in which to bring these concepts into customer management is more important than ever. To find out more about how one BPO is putting diversity into practice, the CX File speaks with Vidya Ravichandran, who is the president of outsourcing operator Glowtouch, which is based in Louisville, Kentucky. During our chat, Vidya outlines what Glowtouch is doing to be as inclusive as possible in how it delivers CX. She explains why this is becoming a point of differentiation for BPOs, and she provides guidance on how customer experience managers of all sizes can formulate a diversity plan that works for them. Vidya Ravichandran, welcome to the CX Files. It's a pleasure to have you here today to talk about diversity in the CX environment.
Great to be here, Peter. Thank you so much. I'm excited to talk to you.
Great stuff. Well, probably a good point of departure would be to find out a little bit about what Glowtouch is doing to promote a diverse CX delivery environment. What are some of the steps that the company has taken the last little while to bring this to the forefront?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. So as you know, we have operations in multiple geographies. For us, we're US based, we're nearshore based, and we're also offshore based. So with being as geographically distinct as we are, that brings a level of diversity into the organization that's just kind of part of who we are by virtue of bringing in talent from multiple geographies. So that's a good start from the standpoint of bringing a lot of different skills to the table. But some of the things that we've actively done across our locations, I'm a woman-owned, woman-founded company. We're doing a lot to bring more women into the leadership team. We're bringing people that haven't necessarily, not really had the opportunity to be in senior roles. So we're trying to identify talent within the company to promote them and give them leadership development track, give them an opportunity to get into some roles that really haven't been ones that would have been part of career pathing for them, because we're looking not just externally for diversity, we're also looking internally to see from the really great talented pool that we have, how are we more intentional about identifying diversity, promoting diversity, bringing them more to the forefront, giving them opportunities that perhaps they might not have gotten otherwise had we not really been a lot more intentional about creating these types of opportunities. So those are some things that we have always done, but really put a renewed focus as we've really ramped up our diversity and inclusion efforts. Because a lot of people internally sometimes are overlooked. I know people talk a lot about just external facing diversity, but we have opportunity within all of our organizations to even start this exercise at home before we even look at expanding it to other areas outside. In addition to that, we've done a couple of really exciting programs for us that we've launched just within the first half of this year. One of the initiatives is to bring people, we're headquartered in Kentucky, as a lot of people know. The eastern part of our state has been decimated, with the loss of coal mines and a lot of people not necessarily having developed any skills or talents for generations because they've really been in one industry. So we've gone out and we're working with an organization to retrain people in that geography into BPO skills. Just, they don't really know very much about the industry, but we've been putting some training programs in place for them to help them develop some talent. And the response that we've had from that area has been astounding. For every position that we post, there's 30 applicants that are looking to fill that job. And the way we fill these roles is through what we call for us, our remote ability to be able to work from home, work from those geographies. And we're finding that as we are investing in training and developing the talent there, they are turning out to be exceptional. They're turning out to be people that are highly reliable, very fast learners, because they know an opportunity has been given to them to really make their way out of a situation where, there's no industry, there's no jobs, and, what they're used to has really gone away and it's not coming back. So it's been a great response. And we've got a few clients now that have been really great about incorporating people from that area into their programs. And we've been just growing that employee base quite a bit. The second program that we started, we call it our Salute program. And essentially what this program does is it helps people, military veterans, and anybody that has been in the military and military spouses be able to find employment, because that's another population that's a little bit displaced. They have goals, they do what they do for the country, and then they come back to the workforce and they find that they're not necessarily in a place where they're very employable. So there's a number of different programs that are available to kind of help them re-enter the workforce, maybe in a different field in which from which they were trained or where they have worked. And we got certified by the Department of Defense to become one of the partners to be part of this program. And what this does is, it really helps people, their spouses can keep their job where they are. They don't need to relocate and go someplace else for a new job. It removes all kinds of logistical hurdles for our veterans and people with disabilities from, having to worry about where to go find employment, and really give people an opportunity to transition into just normal civilian life after their military service and to enter the workforce. So we're so thrilled about this program. We've got a few more that are in the works that we hope to announce in the second part of this year, but these are two programs that we are very proud to kind of put in place and start recruiting people from these different areas into the workforce.
Well done. It sounds like a great couple of steps that Glowtouch is taking. Now, Vidya, I'm going to put some context around the whole element of diversity in the CX space based around what we found in our most recent 2021 Front Office Omnibus survey. And what it showed was that amongst the enterprise CX decision makers, so captive contact center operators, there was a huge emphasis in terms of their investment budget where they were looking to try and fund diversity programs. There was also an identified pain point. A number of them were saying, or a large number were saying, that being able to implement these programs was a challenge. But what this shows me is that diversity is very much on the front lines. It's on the front burner for many organizations across different sectors and countries as a priority. What do you think is driving this interest in diversity as a means of facilitating better CX outcomes?
If you think about sort of the contact center industry, historical context, it's been a fairly homogeneous kind of environment. That's how we've always traditionally thought about it. We've never really thought about diversity in the workplace as being something that's important. But more and more, if you look at the consumers of products and services, with breaking down global barriers and global boundaries, they're everywhere. You have a company out of Kentucky or out of Silicon Valley, may have a product or service, but their end users could be all the way out in Hong Kong, So there's really just no barriers that exist. And for the end customer, the end consumer of a product or service, to have some kind of way to relate to the people that they're talking to who are providing these services, that seems to matter quite a bit. There's a lot more comfort around, I'm talking to somebody that's in my area. I'm talking to somebody that understands my context or my culture. So as a result of the way people are consuming products and services, it's become that much more critical for us to make sure companies like us and BPOs that are in the customer experience business to have a pretty accurate representation of the consumer within their employee base. Otherwise, it becomes unrelatable in a lot of cases. If you're, very high touch, if you're concierge service, being able to relate to the people who are consuming those services in a way that's more than just a scripted answer to a question to fix a problem, it goes a very long way. It builds customer loyalty. You're able to really get those people, to talk to you in ways that they wouldn't normally otherwise talk to you. So I think, there's been a good wake up call within our industry. It's been sort of trending this way, but with the world just getting so flat, so fast with technology, I think it's become a very urgent need for us to make sure that we're very clear and we're very focused on bringing representation of every kind. And it's not necessarily, gender-based representation or race-based representation. Those things matter, but culture-based representation, representation of the diversity of thought, all of these things are just as important when you look at diversity and inclusion efforts. It goes beyond just what is most visible, but it also really what people stand for and how people can become brand ambassadors. How do you do that? You've got to understand those brands well, and you've got to be able to represent that very well.
So, putting you on the spot here, obviously Glowtouch has done a lot in terms of promoting diversity within the workplace and its different sites. I'm curious, Vidya, how do you see how the outsourcing, broadly speaking, has done? How have the outsourcers, whether they're in the States or overseas, what have you witnessed? Are they on the right track? Is this a priority for them, or is there still more work to do?
I think outsourcers are becoming aware of this. Have they gotten all the way there? It's still very much a work in progress. And, some of it is not necessarily because people don't intend to get there, or they just haven't had an opportunity to get there, because recruiting people from different areas, as we ourselves have seen, it's a lot of work. You have to be able to make it a very high strategic area of focus for you to be able to get there as an outsourcer. We are investing very heavily of time and dollars in bringing very diverse people into the workforce, because the low-hanging fruit, the easy answer is always to go where we've gone historically, recruited the way we've recruited. Everybody has processes that have been put in place over, years, decades, and it's really difficult to break out of that. And the only way you break out of it is because you are, it matters to you, it matters to your customers, and you're willing to stop, look at what you're doing, what can we do better, and invest in it. And it's a lot of investment, because there's just not a lot of people from all of the different areas we want to represent in the workplace that are readily available, that can walk into a job and take those jobs on. It requires identifying where they are. Can they work from where they are? What are the gaps in their skills and knowledge? Because nobody's trained them for CX jobs or BPO jobs. They don't even understand the industry. But there's a lot of interest in people that want to learn and get into the workforce. So there's obviously significant investment on the part of the BPOs to make that investment in the training, in the recruitment, to make them work ready before you can put them on a client program. Because at the end of the day, whether you have a diverse workforce or whether you don't have a diverse workforce, clients are not changing their SLAs and KPIs. They want what they want, and they want it to be absolutely perfect and delivered right every single time. So really the onus falls back in its entirety almost on the BPO themselves. So making this a priority, making this a strategic focus, committing adequate dollars behind it, they're all things that I am seeing a lot of companies making the investment in. But again, it also depends on, how large the companies are. Obviously, the bigger BPOs have the luxury of being able to invest in these types of initiatives a lot easier than mid-market or smaller companies who may have the right intentions but might not be quite in a place where they can make these investments. So I think as customers demand these kinds of diversity efforts further, I think companies will make it a greater priority to make those investments in those areas.
But you make a really good point around the investments. In some cases, they're very significant, and you want to make sure that there's going to be an ROI at the end of the day. To what extent are you seeing enterprises, either ones that you're working with currently or just more broadly on the whole, to what extent are you seeing the prospective clients prioritizing working with an outsourcer that's bringing these strategies and bringing these ways of diverse working into their own operations?
It really varies from this is not indicative of the industry, but from our personal experience of what we're seeing, the larger the company we work with, the greater the need for the diversity services and the representation from their standpoint. And the smaller companies all believe and really tell us that it's important, but it's not something that they put above all else. But there are some companies, especially large technology companies that we're working with, that have put this at the forefront. They want to bring diverse suppliers into their supply chain. They want to bring companies that focus on diversity efforts to become their partners. And again, they have the luxury and the ability to do that. But the clients that want these services, desire these services, are not quite at the point of saying, I'm going to choose a diverse supplier to help me for this program over somebody else who's not diverse, because they're able to give me a better price, or they may have 6 more geographies than a smaller company might have. So I think there's a lot of mental shift happening, but have we gotten there? Not yet. We've got quite a long ways to go, because the companies, obviously everybody's trying to figure out how to work efficiently and economically within the industries and frameworks that they exist in. So as far as making dollars available to companies that don't necessarily have as much of a diversity effort and helping them come along, that's not something we're seeing. The other thing that we're hearing from some of our mid-market clients is being a diverse supplier is great, but there's not necessarily anything by way of special programs that they have in place that commits X percentage of their spend with diverse suppliers. They don't really have anything set aside. I think it's more of a nice to have at this point. It would be great to have. But with the larger companies, we are definitely seeing dollars that are being allocated in their overall budgets that says, we're going to spend 5% of our overall outsourcing spend with diverse suppliers. And, there's companies that have announced we're going to spend $500 million in the next year. There's one large company that we're working with that has said $1 billion with diverse suppliers in the next year. So it really depends on how big the end customer themselves is. And obviously, their social commitment matters. It's not just the dollars, is this important to them? And if it is, they're making it a priority if they can afford it.
That all makes a lot of sense, Vidya. So the last question I've got for you, as the head of a company that's putting a priority on diversity, what counsel would you give your contemporaries who are looking at implementing a diversity strategy in their own outsourced operations? What would be perhaps maybe the 2 or 3 bullet points that you would say to them are must-haves in terms of getting a diversity strategy up and running?
I think, first of all, it's making the commitment that this really matters to us. And everything kind of stems from that. And beyond that, being able to make the investment is very important. And the results of something like a D&I strategy is that we're not going to see results right away. This is going to be the long game. This is something that we have to do, one, because we believe it's the right thing to do for our people and for potentially creating employment within communities that don't really have access to that kind of employment. So, what we did internally is we actually created a separate division. It's a team of people that are focused on impact sourcing and focused on diversity initiatives, because this is such a high priority for us that we've actually committed the dollars into making something like this happen. And a lot of the partnerships that we're able to bring on so quickly is a result of us dedicating the time, effort, and money into those programs. So, but also from a tactical standpoint, every one of the large companies has portals that has diversity requirements, and their diversity goals have been laid out pretty clearly. If you were to take the Fortune 500 companies and look through their websites, they all have diversity statements. They all have diversity portals. So I think it's very important to get yourself included in these portals, because at one time, I personally used to believe that nobody ever looked at these things and it didn't matter to them. It was just something people did because they felt like it was a socially acceptable thing to do. But I have learned firsthand that that is not, in fact, true. And when you do have that information available to these large companies, they have teams of people that are going out and reviewing and reaching out to diverse suppliers and making sure that they have an opportunity to speak with them and to be able to provide information about them and be somebody that could potentially receive RFPs. And it's something that we've seen. When people reached out to us, I actually thought it was a joke and I thought it was spam. But in fact, people are reaching out through the D&I portals to companies that are in the diversity space. And what we've also found internally, tactically, when you bring in people of diverse backgrounds and diverse skills within the company, we find that it really creates a much richer workplace within our own company. Because now there are people that can help, whether it's language, whether it's gender, whatever the case may be. When things come up within the business that they have something that a person with firsthand knowledge can answer, it's very easy for people within the organization to go to them for support and say, how would you handle this? Tell me based on where you come from or how you see this, how would I answer this? So it really creates for a much more greater workplace, just a richer diversity within the workplace to be able to bring that talent in-house rather than try to figure out, how you would handle some unique situations, which we may not necessarily know how to handle otherwise.
Great stuff. Well, Vidya, thank you so much. It's really refreshing to hear some of the approaches that Glowtouch is taking to diversity in the CX environment. Thank you very much for your time today to chat with us a little bit about what you're up to and where you see diversity going as part of this very exciting industry we're all a part of.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for downloading the CX Files podcast. If you have a moment, please give us a star rating or review on your favorite podcast provider because this really helps other people to find the podcast. If you have any suggestions for future guests, or ideas, people, or topics, then please just find myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan on LinkedIn and send a suggestion.